5:42 a.m. The calm surface of the South China Sea shattered in seconds. Alarms screamed across the deck of the U.S. carrier as radar screens lit up with dozens of fast-approaching contacts. Sailors rushed to battle stations. The first missile broke the horizon, its trail glowing in the early dawn. Within moments, the world's most powerful warship was under attack. But what happened next shocked every military analyst on Earth. Stay till the end to see how the U.S. Navy turned a deadly ambush into a display of unmatched power. Like this video, subscribe, and press the bell icon for more real military stories that reveal the truth behind modern warfare. In early 2025, tension in the South China Sea had reached its highest level in decades. The world's busiest sea route had turned into a floating chessboard of military power. The United States Navy, long committed to keeping these waters free for all nations, had increased its patrols after a series of close encounters with foreign vessels. Every day, American destroyers shadowed unidentified ships, and surveillance planes watched skies heavy with radar signals. At the center of this growing storm was one ship, the USS Gerald R. Ford, a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier and the pride of the U.S. Navy. Displacing over 100,000 tons, it carried more than 70 aircraft, advanced radar systems, and over 4,500 sailors. It wasn't just a warship, it was a message, a moving symbol of deterrence and power. For months, the Ford Strike Group had been operating in the region alongside its escort ships, guided missile destroyers and cruisers forming a defensive wall around the carrier. Together, they patrolled the contested waters near the Spratly Islands, an area claimed by multiple countries and bristling with military installations. Intelligence reports had warned of unusual movements from one coastal state known for aggressive tactics. Surveillance drones and naval militia boats had been spotted tailing U.S. ships at night, testing their reactions. The situation was tense but predictable, until it wasn't. On the night before the ambush, communications intercepts picked up chatter suggesting a demonstration might be planned against American forces. Analysts debated whether it was another bluff, a test, or something far more serious. The fleet commander, Admiral James Turner, ordered a readiness check but stopped short of declaring a full alert. "We've seen this before," he told his officers. "They want to see if we flinch." At dawn, the crew began their daily routine. Pilots prepared for training flights. Deck crews fueled aircraft. The sea was calm, the sky pale with first light. Few could imagine that within minutes, the horizon would erupt with fire. Unknown to the Americans, hundreds of miles away, missile batteries on a disputed island were already active. Their radars had locked onto the Ford's position. They were waiting for one signal, a single command, to unleash their payload. Tensions in the Pacific had been building for years. The U.S. had warned repeatedly that freedom of navigation was non-negotiable. China and several regional powers had built artificial islands, loaded them with runways, missile systems, and electronic jammers. The balance of power had become fragile. One mistake, one wrong move could light the fuse. For the sailors aboard the carrier, life was a mix of routine and readiness. They knew danger could come at any moment, but most days were filled with drills, maintenance, and long watches under the sun. Many of them were barely in their 20s. They trusted their ship, their training, and their chain of command. That trust would soon be tested. At 5:30 a.m., radar operators aboard one of the escort destroyers noticed faint signals, small, fast-moving blips at extreme range. They assumed it was a flock of birds or minor interference. But then the signals multiplied. Within 2 minutes, there were dozens. Their speed was abnormal, over 600 miles per hour. The destroyer's radar chief immediately relayed the contact report to the carrier. The fleet's communication lines lit up. The Combat Information Center on the Ford verified the readings. These weren't birds. They weren't commercial drones. They were inbound missiles, launched from multiple directions. Within seconds, the ship's status changed. The calm morning routine ended in chaos. General quarters was sounded. Every sailor rushed to their assigned post. The deck, once quiet, turned into a storm of movement. The ambush had begun. No one knew who fired first or from where exactly. But one thing was clear. This was no accident. It was a deliberate strike against a U.S. naval force in international waters. The Ford and its escorts were now in the center of a live battlefield, and what happened next would rewrite the playbook of modern naval warfare. 5:42 a.m. The first missile alert echoed through the ship. A sharp metallic voice broke the silence. "Inbound threats detected. All hands, brace for impact." The crew of the USS Gerald R. Ford had just seconds to react. Radar confirmed over 24 high-speed missiles approaching from the northwest. likely sea-skimming anti-ship weapons designed to stay invisible to radar until the very last moment. The Ford's escorts, the USS Thomas Hudner and USS Lake Champlain, instantly deployed countermeasures. Decoy flares streaked into the dawn sky. Electronic warfare systems began jamming enemy targeting signals. Inside the carrier's Combat Information Center, Admiral Turner and his officers watched the radar sweep tighten. Each incoming blip represented a potential hit. One missile could cripple an entire section of the ship. Turner gave a calm but firm order. Aegis ships engage. Prioritize the closest tracks. The destroyers fired first. Dozens of SM-2 interceptor missiles shot into the sky, leaving long white trails behind them. Seconds later, radar confirmed the first intercept. One enemy missile destroyed mid-air at 10 miles out, but more were coming. The next wave split, half veered toward the destroyers, forcing them to defend themselves. The rest continued toward the Ford. The carrier's Phalanx CIWS, close-in weapon systems, came online. The sound of their 20mm Gatling guns filled the air, firing thousands of rounds per minute. The first missile exploded in a flash less than 2 miles away. The second one followed, but then one got through. At 5:46 a.m., a missile struck near the carrier's port side just above the waterline. The explosion sent a shudder through the massive ship. Smoke poured from the impact area. Onboard alarms howled. Fire control teams sprinted down corridors, sealing compartments and flooding damaged areas with foam. Training took over. Every sailor knew exactly what to do. Above the chaos, the Ford's air wing launched into action. FA-18E Super Hornets roared off the deck, armed and ready to locate the attacker. AWACS aircraft, the E-2D Hawkeye, began scanning the horizon. Within minutes, the source was identified. A small flotilla of fast attack vessels hiding among civilian fishing boats near the contested reef. Admiral Turner gave the green light for engagement. Return fire! At 5:51 a.m., U.S. missiles answered. Tomahawk cruise missiles launched from the destroyers arced low over the sea, heading straight for the hostile position. The retaliation was precise and devastating. Still, the ambush had caught the world's most advanced carrier group off guard. Communications with Washington confirmed what Turner already knew. This was not an accident. The timing, the coordination, the use of mixed drone and missile signatures all pointed to a pre-planned operation. As the attack continued, deck crews struggled to maintain flight operations. Damage control teams worked non-stop. Despite the impact, the carrier's core systems held firm. Its nuclear reactors were secure. Power and propulsion remained steady. By 6:03 a.m., the final wave of missiles was intercepted. Over 90% of the attack had been neutralized, a testament to the Navy's layered defense system, but the cost was clear. 2 sailors injured, minor flooding in 3 compartments, and 1 destroyed radar array. At 6:10 a.m., Turner ordered all aircraft to shift to strike operations. The Super Hornets locked onto their targets, the fast attack craft that had launched the strike. Within minutes, the U.S. Navy returned full force. Laser-guided bombs struck enemy positions, destroying launch vehicles and radar systems. The counterattack ended the ambush as quickly as it began. By sunrise, the sea was quiet again. Smoke drifted over the waves where enemy vessels once stood. The Ford's crew, exhausted but unbroken, stood at their stations awaiting further orders. The damage teams reported containment. Power was stable. The ship was still mission-capable. It had been the most serious naval attack against a U.S. carrier in over 40 years. News of the ambush spread worldwide within hours. Governments held emergency meetings. Stock markets dipped. And for the first time in recent history, a U.S. carrier group had been directly targeted in open waters. But what many did not know yet was how the Ford survived what should have been a fatal hit. The secret lay not in luck, but in the advanced systems buried deep within its steel walls. And that secret would soon change everything about how the world viewed naval warfare. The survival of the USS Gerald R. Ford that morning was no miracle. It was the result of years of engineering, training, and layered defense technology that worked together with split-second precision. The U.S. Navy had spent decades preparing for moments exactly like this, when a surprise attack could decide the fate of a fleet in minutes. The Carrier Strike Group operated under a system known as Aegis Integrated Air and Missile Defense. Each ship carried powerful radar that could detect and track hundreds of targets at once. The Ford itself wasn't built for offense. Its power lay in coordination. It acted as the nerve center, relaying data between ships, aircraft, and satellites. When the attack began at 5:42 a.m., this network activated instantly. The Ford SAN-SPY-6 radar, capable of tracking objects over 200 miles away, identified the incoming missiles. Within seconds, The destroyers USS Thomas Hudner and USS Lake Champlain received firing solutions through encrypted channels. They launched Standard Missile 2 and Standard Missile 6 interceptors, weapons traveling at over Mach 3.5, designed to destroy threats long before impact. Out of the 27 enemy missiles launched, 23 were destroyed in midair before they came within lethal range. The remaining 4 were engaged by the Phalanx close-in weapon systems, rapid-fire Gatling guns that fired 4,500 rounds per minute. These systems created a wall of tungsten and lead, shredding incoming missiles just seconds before contact. The only missile that made it through struck a non-critical section of the carrier AS port side, damaging equipment but sparing the core systems. One reason for this success was electronic warfare. The destroyers deployed Nulka decoys, hovering countermeasures that mimicked the radar signature of a carrier. These devices tricked enemy missiles into changing course and detonating harmlessly over open water. The Ford's own SLQ-32V7 electronic warfare suite jammed enemy guidance systems, making their targeting unstable. But technology alone wasn't enough. What truly saved the ship was coordination. Every sailor on that carrier knew their role. Fire control crews, radar technicians, and damage control units trained daily for these exact moments. In simulations, they practiced hundreds of attack scenarios. That training paid off when seconds mattered most. The attacking force, later identified through satellite imagery, had used a combination of anti-ship cruise missiles and loitering drones. The missiles, believed to be variants of the YJ-18, could travel up to 340 miles and strike with precision at speeds exceeding Mach 2.5. The drones provided live targeting updates, a tactic known as saturation attack, meant to overwhelm defenses through sheer volume. The U.S. Navy had prepared for that too. The Ford SE-2D Hawkeye aircraft, airborne radar planes, were already in the air during early operations. Their radar systems detected the flight paths and helped identify the launch points. By relaying data to the fleet below, they allowed the Aegis system to focus fire where it mattered most. During the counterstrike, Tomahawk Block VI cruise missiles were used to neutralize the launch sites. Each missile carried a range of over 1,000 miles and could adjust its flight path mid-course. The precision of the response ensured that only military targets were destroyed, minimizing escalation. Behind the technology, though, was the doctrine. The U.S. Navy's philosophy of distributed maritime operations meant no single ship fought alone. Each vessel acted as a node in a wider network, capable of defending, detecting, and retaliating together. The Ford was at the center, but its power came from the unity of the group. In the hours after the attack, engineers analyzed data from radar and sensor logs. The results were astonishing, over 96% intercept efficiency. That figure wasn't just a number. It was proof that modern naval defense could survive even the most complex ambush. Experts later described the battle as a turning point in maritime warfare. The use of mixed drone and missile attacks marked a new era where human reflexes alone were not enough. Machine learning, automation, and real-time data sharing had become the shield that protected nations. The ambush on the Ford wasn't just a test of strength. It was a test of technology, teamwork, and nerve. And by dawn, the message was clear. Even in the face of surprise, the U.S. Navy's defenses could stand firm. But the fight wasn't over. The political waves of this event were only beginning to spread, from the Pentagon to foreign capitals around the world. By 8 a.m., the battle was over. The sea, once filled with the noise of alarms and explosions, had fallen quiet. Smoke still drifted from the Ford's port side, but the fires were contained. The crew had prevented a catastrophe. Every critical system was operational, and the ship's nuclear reactors were stable. The USS Gerald R. Ford, hit but unbroken, was still very much alive. In Washington, the Situation Room came alive within minutes of the first impact report. Defense officials briefed the president. Early intelligence confirmed that the attack had originated from a disputed island base, likely operated by a regional power's coastal forces. Satellite imagery showed destroyed launch vehicles and burned-out radar stations, the result of the U.S. Navy's immediate counterstrikes. Casualty reports came in slowly. 2 sailors were seriously injured. Several suffered minor burns and concussions. No one was lost. Considering the scale of the attack, that number was astonishing. Naval analysts called it a near miracle of coordination. In truth, it was preparation, years of training, and the discipline of every sailor on deck. Within hours, the Pentagon released a brief statement. It confirmed an unprovoked attack on a U.S. carrier operating in international waters. The message was measured but firm. Any attack on American forces will be met with decisive defense, it read. Behind closed doors, orders were already being prepared. Recon aircraft and submarines were repositioned. Satellite surveillance increased over the entire South China Sea region. International reaction was swift. Allied governments in Japan, Australia, and the United Kingdom condemned the attack. The global media erupted with headlines. Stock markets trembled, and oil prices spiked overnight. Nations began calling for restraint, fearing the incident could spark a wider confrontation. But inside the Navy, the tone was different. The sailors aboard the Ford had proven that American sea power wasn't just about offense, it was about resilience. Despite a coordinated missile strike, despite damage and confusion, the carrier group had stood its ground. In the following days, the Ford moved to a secure naval port for inspection and repair. Engineers praised the ship's new generation armor and internal fire suppression systems. Within a week, the carrier was declared mission-capable again, a message to both allies and adversaries that the U.S. Navy would not be intimidated or delayed. The Pentagon AS official after-action report described the ambush as the most sophisticated anti-ship strike attempt since the Cold War. Yet it had failed. 96% of incoming weapons were neutralized. The single hit caused only limited damage. For America's rivals, the event was a lesson in caution. For its allies, it was reassurance. The Ford's survival had not just defended one ship. It had reaffirmed U.S. control of the Pacific's strategic waters. The attack that was meant to shock the world had backfired. Instead of fear, it inspired resolve. And in the aftermath, one truth became clear. Power at sea still belonged to those who could endure the storm. As the sun rose higher over the calm sea, the silence that followed the attack felt heavy. For the sailors aboard the USS Gerald R. Ford, it wasn't just another mission completed. It was survival. Proof that preparation, courage, and discipline still mattered in an age ruled by machines. The smoke was gone, but the memory of that morning would stay with them forever. The ambush had revealed more than enemy intent. It had shown how fragile peace could be, how fast calm seas could turn into a battlefield. In less than half an hour, modern technology had unleashed destruction once only possible in full-scale war. Yet in that same span of time, the U.S. Navy had shown it could fight back, protect its people, and restore order. Analysts around the world began to rethink the nature of warfare. Drones, hypersonic missiles, and electronic deception had become the new tools of power. Wars were no longer declared. They were triggered in seconds, sometimes without a single soldier ever seeing the enemy. The Battle of that Dawn proved it. It wasn't strength alone that kept the Ford afloat. It was strategy. It was precision. It was human will, guided by discipline and trust. For the sailors, that morning changed everything. They had seen the edge of modern war, where machines decide life or death in seconds, and humans fight to keep control of the chaos. Many would later say it felt less like a fight and more like surviving a storm that came without warning. Across the world, political leaders watched closely. Some called for peace, others prepared for escalation. But one thing was certain: the rules of naval warfare had changed forever. The age of traditional sea battles was over. From now on, victory would belong to those who could think faster, adapt quicker, and strike smarter. As the USS Gerald R. Ford sailed away from the scene, battered, but still moving forward, one message echoed through every fleet and every capital. Power at sea is not about the number of weapons you have. It is about the strength to survive the first strike and still fight back. At dawn, one carrier was tested, and the world was reminded why the ocean still belongs to the United States Navy.